but not the responsibility to what do I say? Provide security for themselves. It is a responsibility of the state. The state failed, so the other elements are gaining prominence here. Now, if you look at, if you follow the Manipur police handles, and if you look at the people who are caught in this conflict, the insurgents who are either neutralized or who are caught, you will not be surprised to see that majority of them are between the age of 18 to 35. All young people. And even if you look at the people who die in Myanmar in this conflict, because of the conflict that is going on in Myanmar, and many of the in India-based Indian militant groups are there in Myanmar operating there. Many of them died there. If you look at the press release from the underground organizations, you will not be surprised to see that many of them joined the movement, these insurgent groups after May 3. They release with the joining date and all of that. They also have their own government, so they do that. So what we see is people are pushed more and more towards the insurgent camps, and also things that we often don't see in the past. We see, but not in what do we say? Not very general, like very rare to see such kind of statements coming out. Statements like pre-merger status. Pre-merger status simply means independent Manipur, not part of India. Those are becoming part of normal days conversations now, even in the public domain, in media. And the surprising thing is, retired bureaucrats who serve as IAS officers, IPS officers, who serve in the Indian Armed Forces, all the branches of the Indian Armed Forces, they are the people who, many of them started speaking in this language. So the greatest hit, I believe, is those people who believe in the idea of India. Why? Because in our region, there are many ideas which are competing. The idea of Naga nationalism, Meitei nationalism, Kuki nationalism, Assamese nationalism, all this. So these sub-nationalisms are gaining prominence, and the one which is taking hit is the idea of Indian nationalism. So we'll see, but that is how I see, and I really hope that this conflicts really stops, because I think no one is winning here. But solution has to be acceptable to all sides, right? Many lives has been lost, property loss, can be compensated, but life loss, we cannot compensate for life loss. And let's see how the government in their wisdom try to bring solution to this. Okay, now let us start with our classes. Okay, I think this should be the way. Yes. How comes? Wait, okay. I want to share this screen. I'm sharing this. Where do I view this one on? Okay. It's been a while that I use this platform, so I'm also little not familiar now. I've practiced it for quite some time. Acha, it's coming now. Okay. You can see the screen now, right? You can see the screen? This administration, you see that, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Now we'll start the class. So last class, we were talking about Gupta administration. You see the screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Okay, this is the right way. I got it now. Chalo, take care. Let me just try one more. Okay. Okay, I think this should be the right one. And why is it not working? Okay. Gupta administration. So now, Last class we have done and we have discussed about the political life of the Guptas, the political history of Guptas, who is the founder, who is the most important of them all, and uh, the important personalities that live in the kingdoms. But now we will move on to the ministry, the administration of the Guptas. If you have a kingdom and a kingdom as big as the Gupta Empire, you need to have a very strong administration. You have to have a very strong bureaucracy, council of ministers to run this big country that encompass almost half of the Indian subcontinent. So we will see how do they manage to run these big kingdoms, big empire that they created during the 5th century AD. So now we will see here administration of the Guptas. Now, as can be expected, the Guptas, as in the olden days, always at the head of the administration is the king, right? And the Gupta Empire, as always in the olden days, is divided into core areas and non-core areas. Core area, this is here, where the king will have direct administration, and the peripheral areas, border areas, where the administration did not reach. It reached, but not as much as it is in the core in the core areas. So that is the case. So even now, in our present context, if you look at the central part of India, the metro cities, and if you look at the peripheral areas, there is the borderlands. You will see that the borderlands are less administered as compared to the mainland areas. Look at Manipur. Imphal, you have all the government machineries, all the bureaucracies, all the administrative apparatus. You go to Manipur border areas, you will not find schools, you will not find police stations, you will not find roads, you will not find a strong administrative machineries. So simple as that. So this has been the pattern since history, right? So in Gupta time also you have these core areas, which are areas under the direct control of the Gupta rulers, and the non-core areas under the control of Samantas, means his ministers, governors, and all of that. Maybe we call different names, but representative of the Guptas. Then now let us look at the central uh, administration of the Guptas. At the central administration, like this, okay, you will have your king as the fountainhead of everything, king. And then you will have your council of minister. Now also, if you look at India, what do you see? Prime Minister and his council of ministers, right? And then after the council of ministers, what do you have? You have different officers, bureaucracy. For example, bureaucracy. Now take railway, for example. Railway has their own railway minister, but railway minister is not responsible for the daily administration of Indian railways. It is the officers, the bureaucrats who are responsible for running the administration, the railway administration, right? So in the same way, in Gupta administration, we have the king as the central head, fountainhead of everything. King means the highest authority in monarchy. He is vested with legislative power. He is the law. He is the one who executes the law, the head of the military, and also the head of the judicial power. Let anyone say whatever they want. If the king says this is it, then this is it. So the king is the head of everything, right? However, if we were to compare with the Mauryan administration that we discussed before and the Gupta administration and see which of the two empire, the Guptas or the Mauryans has more, or the Mauryan king have more power, then you will see that the Gupta kings seems to exercise and enjoy more power than the Mauryan kings. That is what we see, right? And here, an interesting part is the Gupta ruler to kingship. I am king because I'm descendant of king, or I'm king because God bestowed upon me this right to be the ruler of this kingdom, something like that. Divine right of kingship. Now, there is what the king of Gupta times think of themselves, right? Now then, let us see how do I say that, they claim the divine right of kings? And why do I say that they enjoy more powers than the Mauryans? Let us see here. Just one example. Let us just look at the title of the Gupta kings. Remember Asoka, the most famous Mauryan king. His titles Devanampai, beloved of God. That is a title. But then now you look at the title of the Gupta rulers, some of the titles, not all that I put up here. Maharaja Dhiraja, king of all kings. Parambat Taraka, kings above all, all something like that. So they took these grandiose titles, which its predecessors, like the Mauryans, did not take. And then some kings even went to the extent of saying that I am God, equating themselves with God. And one such example is Samudragupta. And well, maybe it is possible also. Why? Because if you remember the political history of Guptas, this guy, Samudragupta, is, I think, one of the most successful among the Gupta rulers because he expanded the largest number of territories were added into Gupta Empire during his time, during the reign of Samudragupta. He fought many battles, he was successful, and the Gupta kingdom become larger and larger during his time. So he was more successful than the rest, right? And maybe because of all of this, some ego crept into his head and started saying, I'm like God, maybe you don't. But my idea is it's apt, it's only soothing that he says, like, if the last Gupta ruler who become very weak and under whose reign his kingdom, the Gupta Empire, disintegrated, if they assume titles like this, people will laugh at them, not just name. But this guy, Samudragupta, the Gupta Empire more territory was added into his time, during his time, than any of the Gupta Empire. More successful, I think, in military campaigns. However, remember, Samudragupta reign is not considered as the golden age of Gupta Empire, okay? I think it is during his son reign, uh, Chandragupta II's reign, that we say that it is the golden age of the Gupta Empire. Samudragupta, more war, so not much for him to sit down and enjoy life. So now see, Samudragupta took titles like Kubera, Indra, Varuna, Yama. These are all names of gods. He started taking names of gods. Then now let us look at the Council of Ministers. I told you, you have the kings, and then you have your Council of Ministers, and then you have your bureaucrats. So in Council of Ministers also, you have different ministers. You have your railway minister now, you have your defense minister, you have your finance minister. So the Guptas also have different ministers like that. But let us see what is the distinctive features of the Gupta's Council of Ministers. Not distinctive, but standing out features, some important features, because these features is adopted by others also. So one of the such features is ministers were appointed, or ministers held their position on the basis of heredity. During Mauryan times, you become ministers based on your merit. My father is a minister, not necessary that I become a minister. It should be on my merit. That is what the Guptas, what the Mauryans were doing. But now in Gupta period, ministers begin to held their position based on heredity. My father was a defense minister. I will also now be a defense minister because that post is now handed down from me, from my father to me, which is a very bad precedent. Imagine a minister as important as minister in charge of war and peace. So the examples that I gave here in the slide, which is mentioned in the Udayagiri inscription issued by Chandragupta II. Officer called Virasena Sabha got the office of Sandhiv Vigrahaka through inheritance. So this office of Sandhiv Vigrahaka is a very important office. He is the Minister of War and Peace. He is responsible for maintaining relation with others, responsible for checking on the preparedness of the military. And a post as important as this is inherited. And this minister, Virasena Sabha, is not sitting in this position in this ministership, which is very important for the kingdom, not on his merit, but on the basis of birth. He inherited this office through by dint of his birth. And then imagine what will happen to that kind of administration in the future. Maybe if you got lucky, you may have one or two officers who are capable sons of the ministers. But it is not necessary that all the sons of the ministers will be capable or deserve that post. And it also, in later Gupta period, we will see that it will serve as one of the reason for the downfall of and ultimate disintegration of the Gupta Empire. Now let us see some of the important ministers. So why do I keep all this? Because it is asked in the exams. I have no choice. Now, but here, what do you see? The Gupta have an elaborate administration. This is what I can say about it. Name, remembering the name is your job. They have Chief Justice. They have the judicial branch. Then all Chief of Guard. This is, I think this in normal, in our parlance, it will be Ministry of Home Affairs, Head of Army, Ministry of Defense, all this, head of elephant, head of horse, head of foot soldiers, all are, now we have head of Navy, head of Air Force, all that, in that line, but different names based on the history and the times there. So here, what do we see? We see that they have a very advanced form of administration and also bureaucracy. Bureaucracy may not be as advanced as or as what do we call it, organized as the Guptas, which are the Mauryas, which are prior to them. But what we see here is that they do have a very well organized administrative system in their state. And that is the reason why the Guptas were very much successful. And also they were remembered in history, and we are still witnessing their grandeurs, their legacy in the form of language, in the form of art and culture, or in the form of lessons learned from their administration. So here, remembering the name is your job, right? But it is very important that you remember all this. But here, the grand narrative, the big eye picture here is that the Gupta administration is well organized. They have the kings, which is the head of everything, and then they have their council of ministers. And this council of ministers take care of different departments. And that Gupta administration is a very complex or well organized administration, because you see, you just look at the departments. So, which means this is a very well organized administration, from here. But remembering the name is your job. The big picture is the Guptas has a well-organized administrative system and a well-organized bureaucracy. You understand this Gupta administration in that one single line. But examination is through this. These small terminologies and the narratives. When you write your answers, see, this is the difference between prelims and your mains. Answer writing, descriptive answer writing, and your MCQ type questions. Suppose if a question is asked on, even for if you have any history students here, if a question is asked, write an essay or describe the bureaucracy or the administration of the Gupta Empire, you can write all this. You may not remember all the name. How do you remember all this? Dukatas, Mahapratihara, Mahanandayaka, Asbapati, Nerapti, Pilupati. If you can memorize all this, well and good. But you have to memorize this. But even if you don't memorize all this, you know that Gupta has a very well-organized administration. You know that they have different departments. So you can write, they have chief of judge, chief of guard, chief of army, chief of horse, chief of elephant, chief of treasury, chief of police administration. You can write that and still get, let's say, out of 10 marks or so, you may still get 4 or 5 marks writing on Gupta administration without remembering even the single terminology that is here. You can well get it. But in MCQ-based question, they don't ask like that. They'll ask you pinpointed questions. They'll give you options. Pilupati, Asbapati, Navrapti. And then on the other side, they will give head of army, head of horses, head of foot soldiers. And then they'll say, which of the following options are correctly matched? Or maybe they will give one option. Dukatas, Sandip, Vigrakas, Paliputi. They'll give these options, this statement, and then they'll ask which of the following correctly describes the given term. Suppose they give Dukatas. Which of the following statements is correct regarding Dukatas? Dutakas. And then they'll give you different statement. Is a minister responsible for head of elephants, minister responsible for head of horses, he or just something they just made it up. This is the name of a place, this is the name of a point. That is how they ask in the examinations. So for this kind, this is why I always said analyze the questions. I have analyzed the questions and I've discussed it in the class as well in Maram. We have done that. But I'm repeating here again and showing you here with example again. I will repeat again and again. Why? Because this is important. This is how exams are asked. The questions are asked in examinations, not the story. You will know the story. The story is simple. History is very simple if I were to just narrate you the story. Gupta king is like that. The administration is like that. You know, the kings are wonderful, fabulous, easy. The grand narrative is easy. But the question is, in spite of you knowing the story, can you still answer the questions from that story? Questions will be of this nature, with these terminologies. You know the story, but you cannot answer. So that is the saddest part. So that is why I'm bringing all this element here, okay? The grand story, the grand narrative of Gupta administration is well-organized administration, well-organized bureaucracy with the king as the head. They have council of ministers to look after various departments, and they have bureaucracy to run the administration under the various council of ministers. Simple. That is the whole story of Gupta administration. But this here is the intricate details of Gupta administration. And this is from where you pick, and they pick questions for MCQ-based questions and answers. Okay. Now let us go to the next slide. Bureaucracy. So as I said, the Council of Ministers were in turn assisted by the bureaucracy. However, the bureaucracy was not elaborated as that of the Mauryas. And now let us see their kingdoms. Now we have talked about the central administration. Now let us see how the kingdom is divided. This is Gupta kingdom. Now here, the whole kingdom is of course governed by the king. Then this kingdom is divided into different provinces. Now in India, we have different state, different bhuktis. This is what we call bhuktis. And this bhuktis is governed by whom? By the person called Uparika, the position, okay, Uparika. You have to remember this name. They ask in exams, Uparika. And then which of the following is correct regarding Uparika? And then they'll give you statement. He is the governor of, bhuktis, or he is the person responsible for trade, he is a priest, whatever it is. They'll give you like that. So now, bhuktis, make it simple, okay? Let's make it simple. The kingdom is divided into different province, different state. And bhukti in our contemporary parlance will be province or state. And then Vishya is your district. Your state is further divided into district. Kamjong district, Tamenglong district, Senapati district, all this district again. This is your Vishyas. Vishya is your district. And governed by whom? Ayuktas or Vishyabati, your DC. The kingdom divided into states, right? State now run by chief ministers or governors. Gupta time run by Uparika. Then the state is further divided into Vishya. Vishya means districts, governed by Ayuktas or Vishyapati, now by district commissioner, right? And then this Vithis, governed by whom? Vithi. What is this Vithis? Vithis is collection of villages below the district level. Now we have block level. You have different blocks, right? Block, Saikul block, just one example now, Wangoi block, Patsoi block, something like that. So Vithis is below the district in size, but collection of different villages and governed by Vithi. Then you have your gram at the lowest level. Gram means your village, and this village is governed by the village head, the Gramika. So this is a simple division of administration in Gupta's empire. Kingdom divided into bhuktis ruled by Uparika. Then this bhuktis, that is the state, divided into districts, that is Vishyas, ruled by or governed by Vishyapatis. And this district is again subdivided into blocks, ruled by Vithi. And then in the last, at the grassroots of administration is the village, which is governed by the Gramika or the head of the village. Very much like us, you know. Okay. Then you have Nigam Sabhas. So Nigam Sabhas, small councils, local governing bodies, which we see in village or town level, okay? So kind of, if we look at the Gupta administration, it is centralized, no doubt, but we also see an element of decentralization, meaning where powers are shared between the people at the local level, where they are allowed to govern themselves, not always time control from the center, right? For example, your village. If there is any issue in your village, it is not necessary that you always go to police station, you always go to the DC. You sometimes you solve your village by the village councils, right? That is part of decentralization. An example of decentralization at best. So here we have Nigam Sabhas, local self-governing bodies that operate in village and town level. Grassroots institution, where local matters are discussed, discussions were made, and disputes were resolved. So these assemblies had considerable autonomy in managing local affairs. For example, say, okay, let me just give you one example. Your village has a land dispute. Let's not say land dispute. Uh, and let me just take one contemporary example. Okay, fights. There is fight between two group of boys belonging to your village. What happened? Your village council sit together. They will decide which side is wrong, and they said your side is wrong. You have to compensate, or you have to pay fine, and you have to ask for forgiveness. Either it can be in the form of a pig or something, village dinner, whatever. Right? You try to solve that issues. So here, the village councils did not necessarily follow the Indian Penal Code or the Indian Evidence Act. No, they go by their customs, traditions, and common sense and wisdom. So like that, here, this Nigam Sabhas or this local level administrative bodies, they have certain autonomy in managing with local affairs. Then now let us look at the composition of this Nigam Sabhas. Who are the people included? Who are the members in this Nigam Sabhas? And this is important. And this will tell us a lot about the society. Why? Because this is an administration at the grassroots level, at the local level. And who are the people sitting in that local council will tell you a lot about the society. For example, in your village, who sit in the village council? Is it only your village chief clan that will sit in the village council? Or is it open to everyone? Or is it only men who will sit in the village council or also women? So it tells a lot about the society. So now let us see who are the people who are sitting in this Nigam Sabhas, the composition of Nigam Sabhas. So they typically include representatives from different sections of society, such as landowners, merchant, artisans, sometimes even lower caste. Not all the times, okay, sometimes. So which means there is kind of diversity even in this Nigam Sabhas. And how do they take decisions? Participations of various social groups ensure a degree of inclusivity in decision making. Means if all the groups that is in the areas are included in the decision making, it is likely that the decision will be inclusive of all the other interests, of considering the interests of all the social groups that is there, right? So simple logic. So now let us look at the responsibilities of this Nigam Sabhas. So why am I going into these small details and not the big story is because examinations, again repeating, I'm repeating again, as I always want to remind you, this is not your history graduate class or your master graduate class, a master degree class. This is strictly based for examinations. So we will discuss and conduct our class as per the requirement of the examinations. Okay. So now, Nigama Sabhas, what are they? What are their functions? Sometimes in examinations they do ask. They'll give you certain assemblies and they say which of the following statements are true. And then they ask about the functions. They will include functions in their statements. So these are the functions of Nigama Sabhas: collecting tax, maintenance of public infrastructure like roads and irrigation system, resolving dispute, overseeing local markets and trade, maintaining law and order at the grassroots level, adjudicating disputes and dispensing justice according to local customs and norms. This is what we see here. And now let us go to integration with the central authority. Whether do these Nigam Sabhas operate independently or whether they have certain authorities above them. Here, what do we see? Of course, they have certain local autonomy. They, as we see here, adjudicate dispute and dispense justice according to local customs and norms. And even in our area also, we adjudicate as per our local customs and norms. When it comes to marriage, when it comes to land, when it comes to certain petty theft or certain fights in the villages, we adjudicate as per our local customs and norms. But sometimes our local customs and norms do come in direct conflict with the value system that is there in the Constitution of India or with the modern value system. For example, you want to divorce a woman, and I often see this happening in, especially in tribal society, which to me personally is very sad. You would want to divorce your wife, and at what cost? At the price of a pig, some money in the village council, and then fine in the form of a pig or anything like that, and then finish. Then who is taking care? Who will take care of you? What about alimony? What about maintenance? It's very sad. I don't want to go to particular cases, but I see this kind of cases happening even to most educated women and educated men, and who are celebrated in society. If anyone knows, you know. I'm not taking names, but there are in our society, which is very sad. I'm diverting a little bit from the class though. But here, yes, this Nigam Savas and the other local bodies, they adjudicate, dispense justice according to local customs and norms. However, what we have to understand is that they operate under the overall authority of provincial governors appointed by the central government. Who is the provincial governors? Uparika. They operate under the overall authority of the provincial governors, and this provincial governors is appointed by the central minister, by the kings or the central government, and thus ensuring the coordination between local and central government. Even in our cases, even though if the dispute is resolved locally as per the customs, if we are not happy, we go to court of law, we go to police station. And in many cases, what happens is the village council will ostracize you, will outcast you, saying that you go against the law, the custom of the village, and then social boycott. It happens in many of the cases. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but it do happen. I think, which is sad. Now, Buktis, okay, fine. Buktis means the province, okay, headed by Uparika. So now we don't need to go there in detail. Let us look at the Visayas. Visayas means the district level, right? Look here. Buktis, Visayas. We are now in Visayas, okay? This district level administration. Headed by Visyapati, and he carried on his duties with the aid and advice of certain members of the board, of certain ministers. And who are they? Nagara Srishti, meaning chief merchant. Sarta Baha, caravan leader. Caravan leader means caravan means cart drawn by animals, no? So here in olden times, they are kind of the people, the truck drivers or the, let's not say truck drivers, but people who are in logistics, responsible for logistics, for transportation of goods and services and goods and people. So, Sartavaha, Pratha Makulika, chief artisan, Kayastha, chief scribe. So these are the people. Here, I'm repeating again. Try to know the name. So when you finish your class, today's class, the least that you should do for today is just spend 30 minutes and try to remember the names. Okay, the name, terminology, and the name. Try to remember this. It will become very handy. And so here, what do you see here? Why Nagara Srishti? Nagara Srishti, a member of the central government, is the caravan leader, member of the central government, is he an employee of the government? Chief artisan is an employee of the government? The answer is no. So the reason why I'm bringing you here is to show you that there are non-officials involved in the district level administration in the Gupta Empire. They are official members and also government officials, but also other people are responsible in the administration. They advise, they were involved in the administration. For example, town committee, local trading groups. Sometimes they may sit together with the DC and discuss about the issues that they are facing and things that can be done for the upliftment of the economy, right? So in the same way, we have here non-officials like the Nagara Srishti, Sartavaha, Kayastha, Prathamulika in the Gupta's district level administration. And then now let us look at the social conditions. The social conditions. What is a society like? How is a society organized? What is the status of women and slaves in the Gupta administration? Let us see. Now, Gupta administration, carrying forward the Indian tradition from the later Vedic period, which is divided into castes, still, we have that again. Not much difference from the past. Brahmins or priests or the scholars occupied the highest position as it was in the past, followed by the Kshatriyas, the rulers and the warriors, the Vaishyas, that is the merchants and the traders, and the Shudras, the laborers and the artisans. Besides these four varnas, there are also numerous jatis and castes, people who are outside of the caste, and also people, subcastes. For example, I am to Shudra class, laborers and artisans. But even in artisans, there are various artisans. They are what you call blacksmith, goldsmith, and then people who work with leather, animal skins. So there are people who work in horticulture, who work in agriculture. So different occupations. So based on that, there are different jatis, subdivision within the classes. Okay, and this is what we see. And this class and jatis is based on occupation, region, and social customs. In simple words, the society is still divided based on caste system. Let's not say divided, but organized on caste system. Okay. So let's look at the status of Brahmin during the Gupta period. Brahmin supremacy not only continued, but rather increased during the Gupta period. So when I discussed Gupta period, I told you that the Gupta period is also the period where Hinduism and Brahminism got patronage. Mauryan times, Mauryan kings like Asoka, they were patrons of the Buddhism, right? In Guptas, they are patrons of Hinduism. Of course, they do support, they give grants to Buddhists and things like that, but they are predominantly Hindus. So now, the Brahmins during this period of time increase their position than they were before. They were kind of in the top ladder in the caste system. But during Gupta Empire, the position further got consolidated and further increased their positions and influence in the society. How was it possible? Due to large-scale increase in practice of land grants. See, during olden days, agriculture is the primary activity, and you can cultivate only on land, right? The more fertile land you have, the more power you have, the more influence you have. So now, during the Gupta period, large sum of land, you know, large tract of lands were given to the Brahmins as land grants. So this make the Brahmins into a land owning class, a kind of local landlords. And this further influenced their position. And the question is, why do the Guptas give the Brahmins so much of land grants? Now you go to caste, remember caste system. And now look at who the Guptas really are. It is said that the Guptas were Vaishyas, trading classes, traders and merchants. They belong to this class, to this caste. So, in order to legitimize your position as a king, what do? You have to have some stamp of authority given to you by people responsible on this matter. And who are the people responsible for religious affairs? It is the Brahmins. They are the people who make laws with regards to religions. So they need the favor, or let's not say favor, but they would definitely want uh, acceptance from the Brahmins in their position as a king. Why? Because as per the caste system, they belong to the merchant class, the Vaishya class, but they were kings. Kings usually belong to the Kshatriya clan, right? But now the Vaishyas, the merchants, the Guptas are Vaishyas. So maybe in order to get the support and favor for legitimacy from the Brahmanas, they, you know, they give grants, a lot of land grants to them. And what did the Brahmanas do in return for the support that they give, that the kings give to them and the lands that they give to them? The Brahmanas presented the Gupta kings as possessing attributes of God and tried to legitimize the position of the Guptas. Remember Samudra Gupta even go to an extent of claiming himself, equating himself with God, with the various titles that he adopted, to legitimize their position, and adoption of grandiose titles like Maharaja Dhiraja, to legitimize their position as kings. So this can be one reason why a lot of land grants were given to Brahmins during the time of the Guptas. Now let us see the position of the Kshatriyas. The number of Kshatriyas increases during this period of time. Why? Assimilation of large number of foreigners into the caste system. Remember, after the fall of the Mauryan Empire, many kingdoms from Central Asia, West Asia come into India. Many outsiders come into India, establish their kingdom in India, settle down in India, and they got indigenized. So they are absorbed into the Indian society. So now that is why we have so much of diversity in Indian subcontinent. Start from the east, people who look like us, to go to the west, people with uh, long, like big eyes, tall stature, long nose, that the racial diversities that we have. So it can be found in our history. So many groups of people come into India, and then they ultimately settle down in India. So here, by the time of the Guptas, different groups of foreigners has come into India as ruling class, as soldiers, as military commanders, generals, and established their own kingdom in India. But later on, as they become weak, the Guptas occupy all their territories. But then what do you do with these people? They are outsiders, you know that. So, but then they are now part of your society. What do you do? And what caste do you ascribe to? Since they are the ruling class, since they are they are soldiers, since they are military generals, what do they do? What do? You assimilate them and you include them into Kshatriya clans. That is why the Greeks, the Sakas, the Huns were declared as the Kshatriyas. And this can be seen even in our context. Let me just give you one example. If I go and live in Kuki village, maybe not in the first generation. Even in the first generation, if I go to them and say, I want to live in your village, I want to settle down, I want to you know, to be part of your society, part of your clan, it is possible that I'm not saying it will happen. Okay, it is possible that I might be given a title, how keep gain or whatever it is, no, as per the time and the village that I'm in, and then I may well be integrated into their society. And there are many cases if you go to the villages, and there are many non-indigenous, means not the original tribesmen, but people coming from mainland India or other part of the state come settle in the village, and then you will not be surprised for you to see them having local names, local titles, and local clan name. Simple word. That is the parallel that we can draw here. So even during the Gupta times, this group of foreigners who come to India, who settled in India, who build their empire in India, who become part of Indian society, they were given ascribed the Kshatriya clan. So that is why the number of Kshatriya clans or the strength of the Kshatriya caste increases during the Gupta times. And also, the second reason is absorption of tribal communities into Brahmanical society. With the extension of Brahmanical culture in distant areas, a large number of tribal communities were assimilated into the Varna system. The tribal heads were declared as Kshatriyas, whereas the ordinary tribals were given the status of Shudras. You don't need to go to other parts here to understand these parallels. Look at Manipur. In Manipur also, especially in the valley areas, you have this Khetri Mayum, just example. They were kind of the parallel of the Kshatriyas. So when this Hinduism and Brahmanism and Brahmanical society spreads into other areas, the tribal areas, which were not part of the Brahmanical and the Varna systems or the mainland or the mainstream Hindu religion, when Brahmanical society spread, and when this idea of Hinduism and Varna system spreads, they also need to be incorporated into their society, right? So status were ascribed to them. As we can see here, tribal heads were declared as Kshatriyas, and the ordinary tribals were given the status of Shudras. And even in the case of Manipur, when this at the peak of this Mangba and Shengba, that is the concept of purity, who were the people considered as Mangba, means impure people, the tribal people, right? And also some others in some other groups in the valleys. And the pure people, the Brahmins, So that is the same context here that we are seeing. Then the Vaishyas, the trading communities. They continue to engage in trade and commerce. Simple. What about the Sudras? Social and economic status of the Sudras improved during this period to an extent, okay? I'm not saying that it has become a bed of roses for them. Caste system further got consolidated during the Gupta period, remember this. So now let us see the economic contribution. The Gupta period saw significant economic growth and development with advancement of agriculture, trade, and crafts. So because of this, the Sudras, who were primarily engaged in agricultural sectors as laborers, artisans, farmers, they played a crucial role in this economic expansion. And because of this, maybe it's possible that they got, a little bit of, what do we say, the little bit of that benefit that trickled down, because of this economic growth that was witnessed during this period. And maybe perhaps it helped in the perception of the people towards them and the treatment within the society because they're bringing value into the system, right? Urbanization and commercial expansion. So increased urbanization and growth of trade during the Gupta period created new economic opportunities and social environment where rigid Varna distinction was less strictly enforced. Look at the word, okay? It says we're less strictly enforced. It is still strictly enforced, but little bit lesser, That is the idea. The urban centers and marketplace, practical skills and economic utility often took precedence over traditional social status, allowing some Sudras to improve their standing through commerce and artisanal success. Now, look at the example of our state. The village volunteers who are fighting in the front line. Here, your educational background, MA, MBA from Delhi University or any university doesn't matter now. What matters in the front line now is your fighting skills. So the person with the best fighting skills will be the person who naturally emerges as a leader, or perhaps who will have followers behind him, whom the people will respect. Demand as per skill set, not by birth or by virtue of some paper that you hold, the certificate. During urbanization and because of urbanization and commercial expansion during the Gupta times, in the marketplace, practical skills and economic utility took precedence over traditional social status. Very simple. No? Even now, we are moving towards that. People with maybe not coming from a very reputed college, but you have wonderful knowledge on computer applications, cyber securities, all this, you get a good job. You need not even come from engineering background. So if you look at recruitments for organizations like Tesla and all of that, the first thing they don't is like your skill set is what matters, not your degree from IIT, MIT. If you're from there, perhaps there is high chances that you'll be very good and better than the rest, but your skill set is what matters, right? The same principle applies here also. Rise of guilds and associations. The period saw the rise of guild and professional associations. So, okay, let me just here talking about skill set, life lesson also. It is very important to have a skill set, okay? In the present market now, yes, at least in the government sectors, yeah, that certificate still has a lot of value. But in private sectors, even though certificate is important, I think the importance of certificate is diminishing. Just look at the UPSC coaching industry and look at who the best teachers are. Best teachers in geography, best teachers in polity, best teachers in history. You will see that many of them, the best among them, are not from that background, are not from historical history background, either engineers, computer engineers, civil engineers, or completely different subjects. And they study, they prepare, and then they become very good at it. And then, they turn out to be the best in the industry. Skill set is what matters, okay? Certificate is matter, but focus more on your skill set, your knowledge and wisdom, not much on that piece of paper that you will have. But that piece of paper will take a long way, because that will be the entry in many of the job avenues that we have, especially in the government sector. But even there, if you want to excel, that piece of paper may give you the entrance, be the ticket for you to get into that. But for you to excel in that field, you need to have a good skill set, and you have to be expert and very good at it. So now, rise of guilds and associations. The period saw the rise of guild and professional associations, such as Shrenis, which include members from various social backgrounds, including the Sudras. So guild simply means organizations formed by certain professional groups. For example, you have your drivers association, that is your guild. Traders association, that is your guild. Teachers association, that is a guild, right? So it is nothing but an organization of people having the same professions, in simple word. And Shrenis is just the terminologies that is used during that period of time. So what do these guilds do? These guilds manage their own affairs and provide social security to their members. Now, you go from Maram Bazaar to Maram Center by taxi. Who decide the price fare? You don't decide. It is the driver communities, the drivers associations who decide how much they charge. Of course, sometimes there may be some input from the social organizations that, this is too much, you put some limitations on the price and things like that. But otherwise, it is the guild. It is the drivers organizations, or the drivers themselves, who fix the price. So manage their own affairs and provide social security to their members. Social security means that is why in Manipur also we have the drivers unions, various driver unions. What happens is if there is any accident, then the driver union will make sure that they take care of the person. Hospital bills, insurance, just few examples, but different. Okay, some groups may take care of that, some groups may not. But the idea is they do provide social security to their members. So by doing that, since Sudras are also member of the guild and the Shrenis, Sudras also get some form of social and economic support that was not directly linked to their Varna status. And hence we say that, the condition of Sudras likely improve during the Gupta period. Then let us look at the influence of religion and cultural movement during the Gupta time. The Gupta period was marked by significant religious activity, including the growth of Bhakti movement within Hinduism, as well as presence of Buddhism, Jainism, and which traditionally had more egalitarian social views. Meaning, here, remember this, Gupta age, I told you Hinduism thrived during this period. But it doesn't mean that Buddhism and Jainism were completely ignored. No, okay, they do thrive during this period. They also continue to exist during this period. And here, don't confuse with this, okay? Bhakti movement within Hinduism. Yes, some form of bhakti movement, devotion to God, and all that started during this period on. But if we strictly look at the bhakti movement as a topic, then it did not start during the Gupta time. It starts, element of bhaktism was there in Gupta times, but the bhakti as a movement started in South India during later in 7th, 8th century by the Alvars and Nayanas, not this one, okay? So what do this bhakti movement what is this bhakti movement all about? It preached that the devotion to God transcends caste and that salvation was accessible to all, regardless of social standing. So here, according to some philosophies or some religious narratives, Sudras cannot attain salvation. Women cannot attain salvation, according to some religious beliefs within Hinduism and even within some other form of religion like Buddhism and Jainism, apart from Hinduism. Some groups believe that women are not, eligible for salvation. They have to be born again as a man to get salvation. Shudras, again, they have to be born into other higher varnas in order to achieve salvation. But Bhakti movement, this Bhakti belief, preach that devotion to God transcends caste and salvation is accessible to all, regardless of who you are. Okay. So this idea started coming forth from Gupta period onwards. But I'm repeating again, the Bhakti movement as such started much later on by the Alvars and the Nayanas. So now let us look at the position of women. What do we see here? The position of women further declined. Child marriage was common. Widow remarriage were banned. Divorce was usually not allowed. Equal share in the parental property was denied to women. Education was denied. The practice of sati, that is burning women in the funeral pyre of the husband become rampant. The practice of veiling emerged. Veiling means covering your head, covering your face. Emerged. Devadasi system began. Devadasi means it means like wife of gods, something like that, where women will stay in the temples and then their sole responsibility is worshipping God, and then many of them in the form of dancers in the temples. But however, what happened is many of the Devadasis, the women were exploited by the men folks there, by even to an extent by the priests, perhaps. Not difficult to imagine, right? So, and here let me be clear, exploitation of women is not exclusive even to Hinduism. It is there in every religion, okay? So now here, child marriage was common. I think women now are very lucky that you are not married off, even men to an extent. You are not married off when you're 8 years, 9 years, 12 years. Right now, you get an element of choice to decide who your life partner would be. During that period of time, parents decide child marriage, child I don't care. Get married. Widow remarriage were banned. So even now, widow remarriage is looked at as a taboo. We look down upon widow remarriage. But just ask yourself, why? Why widow remarriage is looked down upon? Why it is seen as a taboo? Women during this period of time, remember, education was denied. No education. Then property share in parental property. Property is denied to you. Society is against you. Your husband died. How do you do? What do you do? What do you do for survival? And if you have a children, and if that child turns out, if your children turn out to be women, to be girl again, worse, what do you do? In many cases, what often happens is exploitation of women and women ending up in brothels as sex workers. And one side, you don't allow women to marry and live a dignified life. On one side, you're pushing the person into brothels. That is the sad reality. I'm not only talking about the Gupta times, okay, even in the pre-independence modern times. So that is why many of the Indian freedom fighters, social reformers, have to fight for widow remarriage and to legally allow widow remarriage in India, like Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar and all of that. So even now in our society, we look down upon women, but just ask yourself these questions. Do women not have the right to live a dignified life? Of course, if the women, you may argue that with the women now is different from the women then. They have education, they can earn for themselves. Yes, very true. Then if widow remarriage is banned, if widow remarriage is frowned upon, looked down upon, apply the same to men also. Why not? Then you may say men need companion, or like women doesn't need companion, right? And divorce was usually not allowed. See, when we talk about divorce, I believe many of us here are Christians also. So divorce is a very sensitive one. Divorce means against God. Yeah, of course, it is against the mm, God wants marriage to be only once. Divorce is not encouraged. I don't encourage either. But what happen in case of abusive marriage? Do you allow yourself to be beaten, abused by your husband, by your in-laws, day in and day out, just because divorce is not sanctioned by your religion? Of course, it depends on the value system, the belief systems of the individuals as well. Your husband cheat on you, your husband have numerous mistress, but you're still not allowed to divorce. Think about it. Why? Because of religious sanctions. But if you are really serious about religion, about your faith, based on what kind of belief system you have, your understanding of the Bible, it may take different ways. Some may justify divorce, some may not. But you go back today, if like I think you have like many of you in hostel, you have prayer time and all of that, right? You just go back and read the book of Hosea. Okay, Hosea. Hosea was asked to marry a prostitute, to marry a prostitute. She married a prostitute as per instructions by God. Wife ran away again to the brothels, get into prostitution again. He has to get him back again and again and again, not only once. That is the kind of love that God wants you to show your husband and wife. Maybe even case of abusive marriage. I don't know. Just saying, okay? I don't know. But use your faculty of mind and ask yourself, if you're against divorce, ask yourself, why are you against divorce? When the wife, the person suffering is not you, abused every day, day in, day out, by the parents, by their in-laws, sometimes even by their own children. Remarriage is not allowed, condemned to life of suffering. Or are you just going to say that it is the will of God that I suffer? Maybe. I don't know. That's for you to think about. Then art and architecture during the Gupta time, important part. Why? Because art and architecture is part of your preliminary exam, MCQ, plus descriptive answer writing part, right? So let us see the development of art and architecture during Gupta times. We started our class in 10:30, 11:30, just 1 hour. So we will not take long. Okay, we'll just take till class till 12. That's it. Because online mode concentration level is not like in the offline classes. So we'll try to end by 12. So now let us look at the development of art and culture during Gupta time. So known as Gupta period, also known as the golden age of Indian architecture. Why? Because of the many developments during this time, right, in art and architecture. We will see those one by one. Now, two important development in art and culture includes cave paintings, sculptures, stupas, temple architecture began. Okay, we'll see that one by one. Don't take two here, just important development in art and architecture. Okay, so now remember during the Mauryan times and the other times after the post-Mauryan period, we see that Indian artisans make cave of natural cave, right? We have so many beginning with ancient times and like prehistoric times, we have cave shelters, and then you started having uh, viharas in caves. You started making caves in the rock, in the natural rock, and then you started making human habitations or in that caves, like the Ajanta caves or uh, caves in the Barabar Hills and all of that. You started having cave shelters, not the natural cave formation. In the olden days, you have the natural caves, but from Mauryan times onwards, you started making caves, in the natural rocks, and you have man-made caves now. So, but so far, if you're following the class closely, you will not see paintings, cave paintings. Of course, the old ancient cave paintings, like the rudimentary form of painting you see there. But in these man-made caves, like the Biharas and the Chaityas of the Buddhas, Buddhism, and the other caves of the other sects like the Ajivikas, you will not see important cave paintings in those caves. You will see the caves were well polished, sometimes sculptures are added into that, but not cave paintings. So the phenomenon of cave paintings started during the Gupta times. And then you will see a lot of sculptures, stupas, and then standing temple architecture, standalone temples. You will start seeing that from the time of the Guptas. Now let us see caves. Development in cave architecture. So in Gupta times, you see this development in cave architecture, which already started a long time ago from the Mauryan times, took the form of paintings, development of cave paintings. So now let us look at some of the famous cave paintings. Ajanta caves, series of rock-cut caves in the Sahyadri range, that is Western Ghat in Maharashtra, near Wagora River, near Aurangabad, Maharashtra. Discovered by British officers. There are 29 caves found here. 4 caves are Chaityas, and the rest 25 caves are Biharas. So what is the difference between Chaitya and Biharas? Anyone? We have done that before. Chaityas and Biharas. Chaityas and Biharas. Who's this sending me message? Okay, meeting had on. Okay, fine. Chaityas and Biharas. So Biharas are places where the monks, Jains and Buddhist monks, where they live, right? Bihara is the place where they worship. They're all caves, okay? Rock-cut caves. And here in Ajanta caves, you have 4 caves, which are Chaitya, where they gather to worship, and 25 caves, Bihara, that is where they live. And then there are two-storied caves. These are two-storied caves, means level 1 and level 2. Are Ajanta caves. This is the points that you should note down. Ajanta caves is exclusively a Buddhist caves. Okay, there are no other sculptures, paintings belonging to different religion. So when you go to other caves, you will see that there are Buddhist element also there, Jain caves also there, Hindus. But here in Ajanta, all the caves are exclusively Buddhist caves. All belong to the Buddhist religion. So all the Ajanta caves are carved on a perpendicular cliff, hence there are no courtyards in Ajanta caves. Let me see if I have. No, no, no. I think we have done that before, but okay, okay, okay. See, yeah. Yeah. See, this is the face of a hill. Cave is carved out inside like this. So this Ajanta, since these caves are carved on this perpendicular cliff, there are no courtyard. Okay, there are no courtyard. Suppose if you have a valley here and hill here, rock here, if you cut a cave inside, you have a courtyard. But Ajanta cave is carved on a perpendicular cliff, so there are no courtyard in Ajanta caves. Okay. So Ajanta caves is also unique. Why? Because all three forms of art are combined in this cave. You have architecture, you have sculptures and paintings, all in Ajanta caves. And this Ajanta cave is designated as UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1983. And Chinese Buddhist traveler Fa Hin and Qinsang referred to Ajanta caves and paintings in their travel accounts. EL is missing there in their travel accounts. So now let us look at the technique involved in painting. So point to remember, Ajanta cave is exclusively Buddhist caves, and cave painting tradition flourished started during the Gupta times. Okay. And what are the techniques that is used in cave paintings? Step 1, a layer of clay mixed with cow dung and rice husks was first spread on the rough surface of the rock. Coating of lime plaster was applied. The surface was kept moist until the color was applied. Hence, they are called fresco painting. Here, the word that you should remember is fresco painting. What is fresco painting? It is a type of painting on the surface of a moist wall. On the wall, where there is this layer of mixed clay, cow dung, and when the surface is still moist, you apply the color. So this is a technique, okay, that is used, fresco technique. And then the outlines are drawn in red, and then what? Different colors except blue were used. Here it means blue color is not used in the painting, in Ajanta painting. And what are the themes on which these paintings are made? Jataka stories, stories of Buddha and the previous lives of Buddhas. So now, if you go to any of the Muslim architectures, what do you see on the wall? Most of the time you will not see figure of humans. Why? Because it is against Islam. You will see writings, calligraphy, letters in the walls, right? Most of inspired by the verses of Quran. Here, what is the painting that you see in Ajanta caves? The theme is inspired by the Jataka stories. So, okay, if I don't know if it's still there, or I don't know if it is painting or just some photographs. If you go around Don Bosco campus, you see many pictures and sometimes paintings, right? Those paintings, most of the time, the theme is on Don Bosco, either whether it is his portrait, or whether it is Don Bosco with the children, with the people. The theme is Don Bosco, right? Here, the painting is about the stories of Buddha, the past lives of Buddha, so the Jataka stories. And also when we discuss Buddhism, I told you that Buddhism has many sects, many branches, major being Hinayana Buddhism and Mahayana Buddhism. Here, Ajanta cave is exclusively Buddhist caves. So you have 5 Hinayana caves and 24 Mahayana caves. So means even in these caves, The majority of the caves belong to the Mahayana sects. Again, keep this in mind, Ajanta caves is exclusively Buddhist. And here you have 5 Hinayana caves and 24 Mahayana caves. There are 29 caves in Ajanta. So now let us look at the important caves. Cave number 16. So there are 29 caves. Of the 29 caves, cave number 16 is important. Why? Because of the elegant architecture and painting. Some famous paintings in Ajanta caves. The Dying Prince, Flying Apsaras, Preaching Buddhas. So this Dying Prince, Apsaras, Buddhas. These are some of the paintings that we find in the walls of Ajanta caves. It's amazing, right? You still have these photos in 2025. And Gupta's 5th, 6th century, somewhere around there. Paintings still exist. And these wonderful, beautiful paintings from olden days. Then we go to Ellora. Ellora is another caves, okay? We have now moved from Ajanta cave to Ellora caves. There are 34 caves in Ellora. The caves are carved on the sloping side of the hill, hence most of the caves have a courtyard. Ajanta caves don't have courtyard because they are carved on the perpendicular face of the cliff. But here in Ellora, it is carved on the sloping side of the hill, so that's why most of the caves here has courtyard. Ellora has 3-storied caves. Ajanta has 2-storied caves. Ellora has 3-storied caves. So now let us look at the caves and the associated religion. In Ajanta, you see that Buddhism is the only religion that is represented in Ajanta caves. However, in Ellora, all the major 3 religions during that period of time, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism, are present in Ellora. There are Hindu caves, Buddhist caves, and Jain caves. The largest number being the Hindu caves. Well, caves which is associated with Hinduism. 17 in numbers associated with Buddhism, 12 in numbers, Jainism, 5 in numbers. Now, let's see some of the important caves. Cave number 10. Lord, dedicated to Lord Vishwakarma, the patron saint of craftsmen. Okay. This, I don't need to repeat all this. You just have a look when I give you the PDF or when you just take a screenshot. These are the famous caves in Ellora. See, cave number 10. Look at cave number 10 here. Ravan Gakai, Das Aptara cave, Kailashnath, model on Kailashnath temple at Kanchi. Built, this cave is, I think, one of the most wonderful architectural marvel of India. These caves that you see here, this is carved out of a single stone, okay? All these intricacies, single stone, Kailasnath cave. And then now let us look at the sculpture during the Gupta time. Sculpture, new school of sculpture began during this period. Remember, during the Mauryan times, what are the school of sculptures that we see? Gandhara school, Mathura school, and Amravati. Now, new school of sculpture began during this period. Sarnath school of sculpture. It flourished with Sarnath as its center. So let us look at the features of the Sarnath school of sculpture. What is the material that they use? Cream-colored sandstone. Amravati, they use marble, right? And Gandhara, I think they use red sandstone. The other one, spotted sandstone, something like that. So here, Sarnath school used cream-colored sandstone. And metal was also used for making sculptures. Sculptures were properly covered with dress. They were properly dressed during this period. Remember Indus Valley civilizations where they properly dressed? Of course, they were dressed, but not all the parts of their body were covered, right? The presence of prominent halo around the head, that halo which kind of give a sense of divinity. It is prominent in this Sarnath school of sculpture. And the best specimen of Sarnath school is what we have here, Sultanganj Buddha, Sultanganj Buddha, 7.5 feet tall, taller than all of us, made with copper. Currently located in Birmingham Museum of Art and Gallery, England. They took it away from us, from India. They put it in their museum, and when they go, if we want to see this specimen, that is the best specimen of, perhaps the best specimen of Sarnath art, Sultanganj Buddha, the heritage of India, we have to go to England and see in person. And they will charge money from us also. They took away from us. We have to go to them and see this specimen, and then we have to pay also. That's why we said Britishers loot us. So this specimen, made of copper, Sultanganj Buddha. Then now stupas. Very less number of stupas were constructed. The best stupa of this period is the Dhamek stupa. It was constructed at the spot where Buddha delivered his first sermon. I think that's in Sarnath, right? Originally constructed by Asoka but rebuilt during the Gupta period. See, look at the shape of the stupa. It's different from the stupas that we discussed before during the Mauryan time, right? Stupas usually looks like this. Something like this, right? And you have your wall, you have your gates, four gate, you have your circumambulatory part, and then you have your hermica. This is what stupa usually looks like, right? But look at the stupa here. It's different, no? So stupa did not come, all of them did not come in the same design. Okay. So this stupa that is constructed by Asoka, but rebuilt by Gupta, and built on a place where Buddha delivered his first sermon. Okay, what was there? Temple architecture. Right, let me check. Okay, let us go. Let us do temple architecture on other day, because this is a topic in itself, and I want your mind to be fresh when we take this class on temple architecture, because this is important. So let us end the class for today, you know. And